All right, so we're back. How was that? Okay, good. So in the last section, unless you have the memory of a goldfish, you might remember that we generated a new project using the Create React app. And then after we generated the project successfully, if you scrolled up a little bit, you probably saw that we had installed a lot of packages. So in this video, I want to let you know why we had to install so many packages just to run a React application and build one on our local computer. So we're going to take a close look at a couple of different diagrams quickly. So just use the Create React app to generate a new React project. Now inside this React projects, there are tons of different dependencies that we are going to use to help us write our application. So in this video, I want to focus on one particular dependency because it's going to help you understand why we had to install so much software. So the name of the dependency that I want to focus on is Babel. Now the term Babel might well be familiar to you. I'm going to give you a quick overview on what Babel is in this context and why we use it and why it's included inside of our React installation. And the other things such as Webpack and Webpack Dev Server, we're going to talk about the purpose of those dependencies over the course of time. As you've been learning JavaScript, you've probably been learning a version of JavaScript called ES5. And chances are, you've also picked up a couple of features out of something called ES 2015 as well. All I mean to say is that each version of JavaScript has a very particular set of features and syntax available to it. There are different versions of this ES for every year after 2015. So again, chances are you've learned a little bit about ES 2015. Now, of course, there's also an ES 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and so on and so forth. And every one of these different versions has some new wealth of features and upgrades to the JavaScript language. Now, the important thing to understand here is that these updates to the language are generally for the benefit of developers. So in other words, if we can make use of ES 2016 JavaScript in the next few years as well, then we're going to have a really good time because these newer versions of JavaScript has new syntax and new features available that makes your life as a developer a lot easier. However, there's a little bit of an issue with this, you might have guessed. It just so happens that certain browsers are not always 100% up to date. At present, just about every single modern browser out there has excellent support for ES5 JavaScript. So in other words, if we write ES5 JavaScript code, then we can send it out to just about any version of browser, and that code's going to be executed just fine. The same is almost true for E2015 as well, I'd say. All the new updates to JavaScript included in ES 2015 can generally be executed in every modern browser. But as we start to look at years after that, like 2016, 17, 18, 19, barely any browsers for these recent years have support for the changes to JavaScript that are included. So, yeah, you can tell I'm heartbroken, but it's their loss. So we're essentially in a conflict here, a little bit. On the one hand, we want to use the latest versions because they make our lives easier as developers. But on the other side, well, we can't actually run the code that we're writing because all the browsers don't happen to support it. So in order to overcome this, we make use of a tool called, and you wondered where I was going with this, Babel. Babel. It's a command line tool that can take any version of JavaScript and it will convert it to a newer version. So this right here is a diagram of what might happen if we don't use a tool like Babel. We might write some ES 2015 code inside of some JavaScript files, and then send it down to some browser with no guaranteed ES 2015 support. So if we did that, then our code might completely fail to run on that user's browser, and they probably won't see any content when they visit our web page. They'll probably just see a totally blank page or something like that. So with Babel, we write our ES 2015 or 2016 or 2017 and so on and so forth code, and then we feed it into this command line tool called Babel, and Babel converts it to ES5 version of JavaScript code that is going to be safely executed on just about any browser in existence. That's the job of Babel. Now, as I said, anytime that we generate a new React project, Babel is included by default. Internally, Babel consists of, guess what? A tremendous number of packages. They're all different. Now, there's definitely other dependencies inside of this project as well, and we'll talk about them over time. But we do need to understand a little bit more about the Create React app. So let's continue in the next section, and we're going to start looking at the contents of the project that we've just generated.